PopCap, please listen to us. We are your fans. We are the ones who have adored your franchise. We are the ones who play your games. Many of us, including myself, have been defending our lawns for about a decade. We are the ones who have to suffer through every new Plants vs. Zombies 3 soft launch. We are the ones who criticize them. Ultimately, this is because we are the ones who care. We are the ones who hate to see the direction this game is headed, simply out of love for the franchise. Plants vs. Zombies 3 is probably the most pivotal game for the Plants vs. Zombies franchise. This game will decide the fate of Plants vs. Zombies. It has the weight of the whole franchise on its shoulders. I'll be honest, I resisted making a video like this because I thought eventually PopCap would listen to their criticism and decide to change the game for the better. This wasn't the case. In this video I'll be giving my opinion on the game, and I think my opinions generally line up with the rest of the communities as well. First, to clear something up, I know there will be a lot of EA bad, PopCap good comments. Before you comment that it's all EA, please read my pinned comment. Anyways, here's my criticisms of Plants vs. Zombies 3. The first and, in my opinion, biggest problem with Plants vs. Zombies 3 is that it isn't even a Plants vs. Zombies game to begin with. The first iteration of the game mocked Clash Royale in many ways, with the UI and the sunflower producing knockoff Elixir. When they started from scratch to create the new landscape version that we have today, the community was understandably excited. But as the soft launches have been progressing, it's now very clear that they're just copying other games now. Look at this Reddit post that sums up all of this nicely. And this post wasn't even made about the latest update, which literally involves building Neighborville like all those Scapes games. Of course, most of the homescapes issue has to do with the UI and the story, not the gameplay. But the gameplay is absolutely abysmal too and copies other popular mobile games. First of all, the live system. Need I say more? Many people complain about the removal of the seed selection, and this is a classic example of PopCap trying to turn the game into something that it's not. They're turning it into a puzzle game in hopes of rivaling the already extremely saturated mobile puzzle game market. They added lives and moved away from the pick your plants because they want the game to be a generic puzzle game, not a unique strategy game like the last two games were. Surely PopCap can realize that we love the franchise for Plants vs. Zombies, not for fucking Candy Crush or Homescapes. Now, I'm not saying these are bad games, nor am I saying that this genre automatically makes Plants vs. Zombies 3 bad. All I'm saying is that this is not Plants vs. Zombies. If they wanted to make a shoddy mobile puzzle game knockoff, then it should just be a spin-off, like Plants vs. Zombies Scapes or something. Instead, they want to make this the actual third installment of the actual mainline series, preceding two of the most legendary games ever made. If this was just a spin-off game, I wouldn't be so mad. But instead, this is the complete direction of the mainline franchise. And that's extremely worrying since, as I mentioned before, this game will either kill or revive the franchise. All they have to do to please us is remove all of the puzzle stuff like lives, pre-selected plants, power-ups, and instead focus on what Plants vs. Zombies was actually good for in the first place. It just really pisses me off that so many game developers these days are killing their games by turning them into lifeless cash grabs of the modern gaming industry. Okay, so most of my criticisms from my last point were about the direction that the game was taking, as well as the way the developers were ruining what made the game great in the first place. However, my second point will look past this. Okay, so let's assume they are making a puzzle game with lives and lock plants and all that stuff. There's nothing we can do about it. So, what are we left with? Is the actual gameplay itself inside the levels any good? Are the levels fun? That'll have to be a big fat no. I've seen many people calling it a 50 level tutorial, and they're absolutely right. Each level lasts like 30 seconds at most. Most of the levels feel like one brown coat, then the final wave of a couple more brown coats. What's the point of a tower defense game when you don't even have enough time to place towers, and there's nothing to defend against? I haven't even mentioned the abundance of tutorial based levels that teach you about different plants and zombies and other features. They just hold your hand the whole time. What's fun and challenging about a game that does everything for you? What happened to the days of the original Plants vs. Zombies when they basically just taught you how to place sunflowers and left you to your own devices? Do they think we have so little brain cells that we need a 50 level hand-holding session? This is made even more frustrating since the players who have bothered getting a hold of the soft launch are likely your most experienced players who have stuck with the franchise for years and years. We don't need whole levels just to show us what a plant does. That defeats the fun of trying it out for yourself and seeing what it does. If the UI and direction the game has taken is bad, we don't even have good gameplay to rely on. If this game were released in the direction it's going now without any major changes or reconsiderations, we can just say goodbye to the Plants vs. Zombies franchise right here and now. My third and final point isn't about the game itself, but it's about how PopCap is handling their feedback. If you've been keeping up with the soft launches, you may know about the surveys they give players. These Google Forms literally just ask you questions that glorify the changes without actually asking your opinion on the changes themselves. They ask you stuff like, which building style would you like to see? When there's nowhere to say that you despise the building aspect in the first place. Their questions just assume that their features are good. They just ask fruitless questions that attempt to justify their knockoff choices that were just ripped from other games. The whole point of player feedback in the first place is to hear positives and negatives. PopCap is just asking for positives and not negatives, because they know that as soon as they ask an open-ended question in the survey, where players can leave actual opinions, everyone will absolutely dump on the game, and rightfully so. They've already decided what direction the game is taking, and they're just too weak to actually ask the players if they like it or not. Just as a side note, lots of people may shrug these things off as, oh, it's just a soft launch, it'll get better. But I think you're forgetting the whole point of a soft launch is to get feedback from the players so they can improve upon the game before it's released. If we're not telling them what's wrong with the game right now, then they'll just release it as is. That's why, if at any point in time, the soft launch is actually the best time to actually criticize the game. Because this is when the developers will actually take on board the criticism to the highest effectiveness. To finish off, I just wanted to say that all this criticism is purely from the love that I have for this franchise. I and many of you grew up with this franchise. I mean, when I was younger I even had the plush toys. I played the free web version with a gig of football zombie before I could get my hands on the full game. This franchise means so much to us all, and to see the direction it's taking is just really, really sad. PopCap, please listen to us.